Well, everybody, it's my pleasure to introduce our guest lecturer and performer for the day. Stephen and I were at Iowa together. I was in, I think, my last year as you came in.
Mm-hmm.
And so we got to spend some time together, played a little bit together in a quartet, which was my very good fortune. And Stephen has played all over the world and performed in national competitions and international competitions. He tours quite frequently with his quartet, the Zizix Quartet, made up of alums of the University of Indiana University, excuse me. That's a big deal with that. And they're all grad students together, right?
Yep.
At Indiana, and formed this quartet back in 2007,
Mm-hmm.
and have been doing quite well for themselves since then. And you're going to hear him play a little bit, and I'm sure you'll see why. So one of the main reasons I wanted Stephen to kind of talk to you today, I know we have a number of students who are going to be auditioning at some schools in the very near future to transfer here once you're done with this semester. And he's got quite a bit of experience auditioning in a number of different settings. And so I'll talk a little bit about that and maybe some other things. And please feel free to ask any question that you wish, as long as it's within reason, Mr. Covert. So, without further ado, here is Stephen Page, Dr. Stephen Page.
Well, thank you very much. I'm glad to be here, of course. Do we want to talk first, or should I going to play something? Okay, yeah, I'll play a little something first. So, I hope you'll all be able to make it tonight. My pianist is en route, so we'll play a little bit without piano for the moment. But if you're coming to the program tonight, you'll notice that I borrow a lot from other repertoires. I'm really fascinated with flute and violin repertoire, and I think it suits the saxophone quite well. So it's something I've been very keen to take up an interest in. So I'll just play a little bit of the first movement of the Prokofiev flute sonata, and just to give you a little example of kind of what might be on the program tonight. Thank you, thank you. So that's actually, I've never played that in public before, so you're a good test audience, thank you. Like Dr. Vanderheiden said, I'm very pleased to talk about the audition process. I received my 3 degrees from 3 different schools, so I went through it 3 different times. It's of course a very stressful time, I think, most will agree. In terms of how do we prepare, what are we thinking about for auditions? Is anybody in the room coming up towards auditions this semester for transfers? Anybody want to share like what their, what's your primary concern as you get close to this date is drawing ever closer where you're going to have to go and play and meet with these faculty members? Volunteers? Do I have to pick someone?
I actually auditioned at the end of last semester for Western University and was accepted.
Okay, congratulations.
Yes, thank you. However, I wound up not going to school there due to financial matters.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing I think a lot of students have problems with is that you're going to school, taking all of these classes, and you're expected to prepare pieces for an audition at another school. And sometimes it feels like that could be very rushed.
Sure.
Just, I know I felt that way. But I was able to get through it,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I think, maybe not to be, to be very confident and to not have so many fears going into the auditions, to keep in mind that the professors are your friends, they want you to do well. And it is true,
Yeah.
It's very intimidating to sit in a room full of doctors and music masters who are so highly skilled,
Mm-hmm.
because you want to shine for them. But I think as long as you keep your head straight, you won't have those problems, because I didn't.
Right. Well, I think you hit on a really good point here, is that the people that you're going to be playing in front of and meeting with, maybe for an interview type situation or what have you, we walk into this room, and maybe it's a room like this, and there's 5 faculty members sitting in the chairs, and you have to stand and play, and you sort of feel like you're in front of the firing squad. It's like they're waiting for that mistake. Nope, door's over there, thank you. But that's not the case. Yeah, like you said, they want you to do well. They want to see you succeed, and along that lines, I think a lot of times what we lose sight of as students preparing for an audition, and when I was getting ready for grad school, I felt this way. I was getting ready to audition for my master's, and I'm going to be in a room with these very esteemed saxophonists and being judged. And what I realized after my first audition was that, I'm auditioning for them, yes, but in a very same way, they're auditioning for me. It's not always, we can't get along with everybody, right? So I think there's really something to this of like, it's not just me auditioning for the program and for their studio, but it's to make sure this is going to be a good match. And oftentimes, I'm sure many of you have come across it, where a student doesn't get along with their teacher. And this is very different than studying biology or chemistry or whatever the case may be. We're spending a lot of one-on-one time with his teacher. It's very, very important that we're able to have a very good relationship. Not only so that we can learn as much as we can, but in the future, these are the people who help us along with our careers. I'm constantly going back to my previous professors and asking for recommendations or advice or career consultation or whatever. And it is so important that we cultivate this great, long-lasting relationship. So when you're standing in that audition and you're worried about it, just keep that in mind, that it's not just about are you good enough for them, but whether it's going to be a reciprocal type of relationship. I think it's really, really important. You don't want to go study somewhere where you're going to be miserable, of course.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it's a good point. Absolutely. What else along those lines of auditioning and getting ready for this next step of education?
When you go to audition, would you say that universities would they rather see you play a more classical piece that probably is more generally played by that instrument? Or would they rather see you do something a little more out of the box that's a little more unique to your playing style?
Sure. Good, very good question. Yeah. How do you stand out in a crowd, right? Of course, when we're talking about selecting repertoire or whatever you might play in an etude, the things to consider, of course, are what's your degree goal. So, like when I did my master's audition at Indiana, I was auditioning for a saxophone performance degree, non-jazz oriented. So, of course, I didn't play any jazz. But if that was something I was interested in, and I wanted to say, I want to wear both hats and be, on both sides of the saxophone, then I might have played some jazz too. And that does happen quite a lot there. But I do think it's important to play to your strengths. Of course, you want to play repertoire that's very representative of what we're capable of and what we're capable of doing at a very high level. But then also, like you say, we want to stand out in some way. We don't want to be just another face in the crowd. So, certainly there's a lot to consider. But if you can, find that piece that really plays to your strength and maybe isn't like the standard kind of audition repertoire or standard concerto type of situation, I think it will only play to your advantage. I think that's something that can very much work in your favor. Absolutely. Yeah, it's a good question. Good concern. Yes?
What do you do for nerves if you get any stuff?
For nerves, yeah. Well, it's a big problem, isn't it? Again, I just kind of go back to the thinking that it's not really just about what I'm doing. I'm not just auditioning. It's this reciprocal kind of relationship. But I think it's a pretty rare occasion that somebody would play or perform and somebody walk up to them afterwards and say, "That was really terrible," right? We're not really like that in this country so much. So, it's really just about sharing ideas, and you're just saying, "This is what I have to offer." I know tonight I'll play this recital. I'm going to miss a couple notes. It's going to happen. Maybe more than a couple. I hope not.
You're not
But
supposed to think like that, are you?
I'm sorry.
You're not supposed to think like that, are you?
Well, you're not supposed to, but it's a reality of what we do, and really, there's nothing wrong with making a mistake or anything like this, and you're really on stage or going to the audition just to show them what you have to offer, and if they like it, great. If they don't, that's not a big problem. It's a very, very personal, individualized thing. So, for the nerves, it's something we all deal with, but beyond that, you can practice putting yourself in these tense situations. So like if I asked you to come up here right now and perform, feel pretty nervous, right? Yeah. On the spot, really out of nowhere. So, this is something you can rehearse in a way by, walk down the hallway and grab your friend and say, "Hey, come here, I'm going to play for you. Got 10 minutes? Very out of the blue, very, it's a forced, uncomfortable situation. So, I think there's a lot to that. A good friend of mine during my master's, she had very bad stage fright. And this is somebody who's getting a graduate degree and very invested in what they're doing. And her teacher knew this was a problem, so every Wednesday in their seminar class, she had to play in front of everybody, excerpts, for 2 years. She's not at all afraid to play in front of anybody anymore. So, we need to put ourselves in these uncomfortable situations. Otherwise, we won't get over it. I used to be very nervous about playing, and now it's not so much a problem because I've done it for so many years and for so long. I mean, there are certain instances where I still get a little shaky. And the big joke is, in my quartet, we're playing all the time all over the place, but when I do get nervous, they all know that I pace. That's just what I do. I need to pace it out. I walk around the room while I'm playing and warming up, and that's just how I deal with it. And our other member has to sit, and she's got her music, and the metronome's going, and she's got to play. Like, that's just how she gets rid of that energy. So, if you can put yourself in these situations where you're going to be nervous and go through your audition rep or your recital rep, and then know what you need to do to calm yourself down, that's the best we can possibly do. That's a good question. Absolutely.
I have a question.
Sure.
I didn't know if you had any tips for students regarding practicing,
Sure.
like how to do it in an orderly fashion. And also, when you're working on new material, do you stop after a mistake, or do you try to sight read a whole piece? How do you approach the music when you're encountering it for the first time?
Sure. Yeah, that's a tough question. And this is one of those things that it's different for everybody. We all have our own process. But for me, so for instance, I know next year I'm going to play, the next fall, the Strauss Violin Sonata. It's a beautiful piece, amazingly difficult. So now I'm listening to it a lot, different recordings, and really trying to get it in my ear and be comfortable with the piano part and the violin part so I could really sing the whole thing without any trouble. So when I'm finally ready to sit down with the music and start to put it on the horn, because there are many problems with putting it on saxophone, I've already got it in my ear. So my fingers kind of already know where they need to go. It's not a matter of reading the notes as much and learning the muscle memory. So I do a lot of listening before I start to really tackle a piece, but I always make sure I'm listening to as many recordings as I can so as not to pick up somebody's singular interpretation, which is a dangerous thing, of course. From there, as I'm working on it, like you said, if you make a mistake, do you stop and fix it? Generally, if I know there's a very specific problem area, I always isolate and do various things to try and figure out what the problem is and how to address it. So for me, it's always it's a big issue of just finger technique with getting rid of the blips, as we call them. And so I'll identify the problem and then micromanage it and then try to put it back in context a little bit at a time. So for me, this is a good way to start small and then reincorporate it back into the big picture, and then try and do the whole phrase or the whole page or whatever the case might be. A lot of times as we're learning rep, and there's that one hard spot, and as we get closer to it, we say, here it comes, here it comes, here it comes. And there it goes, and I messed it up, right? Because we get really anxious about it. We know it's coming up, and it's the anticipation. Am I going to get it? So for me, if I can really isolate it and work it out in detail in a very small way, when I reincorporate it, I don't really have the anxiety over that section anymore, if that makes sense.
It does completely.
Yeah, sure, of course. Yeah, practicing is always it's a difficult topic just because we all have our own way about it. And I've figured out my way after many, many years of practicing. So it's definitely different for everybody. But I try to be as efficient as possible because there's just not enough hours in the day, of course. And as we all know, each year seems to get busier. I remember being an undergrad and thinking, well, the first 2 years are going to be really busy, and then it's smooth sailing. And in grad school, I won't be busy at all, and I can just practice. It's just gotten worse and worse every year. There's just less and less hours in the day, and as people start having families and other obligations and jobs, and the hours just diminish. So we have to be very, very efficient about what we're doing. The luxury of a 6 or 7 hour practice day, like when I was 19 and 20, is just not a reality. So I think for me, to combat that, the listening and the really getting comfortable with the music before I try and really put it on the horn is a big help. Because we spend a lot of time in the car and walking around campus and doing these other things, so I can always be listening, and in a way that's kind of practicing for me. So it's just a matter of finding our way around these time blocks. Yeah, good question, very good question. Yeah. Hit me.
I just wanted to know how you knew what school you picked was like the right place for you to be.
Sure. Yeah, like I said, there's a relationship that we're forming with our teachers. When I was in high school, I grew up in South Florida. I was born and raised there. I started studying with a man by the name of Anthony Ciccarelli. He's the retired clarinetist from Philadelphia Symphony. He happened to live 50 miles from my house. And he's a brilliant musician. And he played saxophone for Philly when he was with them. And so he's very knowledgeable about the instrument. And so I went and I had my first lesson. And I had, to this point, really only played jazz. And I love jazz. And he took down an LP. Who knows what an LP is? Okay. It's a record, really? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, a vinyl record. And so he played me this record of a saxophonist, and it was the most beautiful playing I'd ever heard. It was a concerto with orchestra, and the man playing on the record was Eugene Rousseau. And from that moment on, I was hooked. I don't think I really ever played, seriously worked on jazz for years after that. I was really only into playing classical saxophone from hearing one recording. So I looked up this person and started learning more and more about him, and I read articles and got all his CDs, and he had a master class every summer in Wisconsin. So I flew up to this master class and we met and I had a lesson, and that was it. I had to go study with him, period, end discussion. So I applied my senior year of high school to a number of schools, but the University of Minnesota was where he taught. That was my primary choice, and I got accepted early, and it all just worked out. And I knew, because I'd gone and spent that time with him at his master class, we'd had several one-on-one lessons and we had lunch together so we could talk about school, that this was a man I could get along very, very well with, and who is also extremely knowledgeable about the instrument, of course, but the music industry. He had his doctorate, of course, and he'd studied at the Paris Conservatory, and you know, he has really done it all and done amazing things for the saxophone, classically. So I knew this would be a good place for me. So I went to the University of Minnesota and spent 4 great years there. And Dr. Rousseau is still a great, great friend, and I talk to him probably once a week. I was there last weekend. I played a recital at Minnesota. You know, this is a relationship that's now 13 or 14 years old. So I knew from having spent that time with him that it would be a very good fit for me. The other schools that I auditioned at, they would have been a good fit too, but not as good as that fit. So for me, it was very apparent early on that it would be a good place for me to study. So I think there's a lot to be said for taking the time to be in touch with those schools and professors you're interested in studying with. Send them an email. See if you could go for a lesson. I mean, I'm always very pleased to have students say, I'd like to come have a lesson. I'm interested in the school. You know, could we meet for an hour? Of course. You know, please come down. And I know that all of my previous teachers do that all the time. And this is another good way to kind of audition them to see if, you know, what's their teaching style? Can I get along with this kind of teaching style? You know, it's a nice opportunity to see how things work. You only get 20 minutes in an audition, you know, how much can you really see? So, you know, I think there's a good opportunity there to see what that relationship might grow into if you can spend the time.
When you were saying auditioning your teacher and, you know, seeing if you get along,
Mm-hmm.
how do you walk the line of, you know, get along with them, but, you know, then again, you want them to push you past the boundaries you're normally comfortable with?
Yeah, well, that's important, and you know, I've seen it a lot where, especially with young teachers, it's very difficult. Like, I'm pretty young. I'm only I'll be 28 in April, but I have to draw that line in the sand with my students. Of, you know, we're close in age. We could get along very, very friendly. It's not a problem, but I have to be the teacher. It's my job to push them. So, like you said, there's, you know, you need to have a teacher that's going to push you and not just say, oh, it's great every week, wonderful, good job. So, you know, we want people to push us to really achieve, you know, what will be our personal best. And, you know, everybody's teaching style is a little different. So, you know, in the United States, I think we're kind of lucky that we get a lot of positive reinforcement, which is a good thing. I've had, when I was younger, a number of lessons with the professor at the Paris Conservatory, and it's not so nice. It's very direct. You know, a lot of people can't really handle that. It's not so much yelling, but very easily frustrating. Why can't you do this? No, it's this way. So it's a very different type of teaching, and there are people in the United States who are like that. So if that's not something that's going to work well for you, you know, that's your opportunity to find out. This type of teaching doesn't work for me, so coming here maybe wouldn't be the best idea. I won't get the most out of it, right? So if you can have that opportunity to go meet with a professor and have a lesson, you know, it's a good chance to kind of investigate exactly what you asked, whether they're going to really push you or not, or whether you can work with that kind of teaching style. Yeah, it's a very good question.
Auditioning for different universities, are most audition processes the same, or do they change from school to school?
I would say at the very root level, they're pretty much the same. Most schools will have on their website or catalog, you know, for saxophone, please play 2 contrasting pieces, scales, major, minors, diminished, whole tone, whatever. some are very specific. It depends on the instrumentation. I know with piano, they'll say, okay, we need a fugue, we need Chopin Ballade, we need this concerto, whatever. So it's always good to pay close attention to the details. But at the bulk of it, you're going to come in, you're going to play your prepared pieces. You might talk, have a little question and answer with the faculty members, and then you'll be on your way. But in terms of the actual repertoire, it does depend on the school and even the teacher. But my experiences in doing auditions for undergrad and graduate school, it was largely up to me what I wanted to play. I was responsible for scales just like anybody else and sight reading, but the repertoire choice was up to me, as long as it was contrasting in some way. But definitely be very, very careful in checking the requirements. I was recording an audition at Minnesota when I was an undergrad because I worked for recording services. And a pianist came into the room and sat down, started playing. A very neat piece. I remember it was kind of tango-esque, but the teacher stopped him and said, okay, your sheet here says you're playing Chopin Ballade and Beethoven this, etc. And he said, well, I just have my original compositions today. I said, okay, thank you. There's the door. He had written down X, Y, and Z on his audition sheet, which he sent in with his application, and then showed up with nothing on it. So, we want to avoid these situations as much as possible. So it's just a matter of spending the few minutes to make sure you've got it all in line. But yeah, it shouldn't be such a big problem. Yeah, good question though. You don't want to fall into a trap. Joel.
When was there a particular situation, playing situation or audition that you recall being the most nervous that you've ever been, and how did you deal with that specific situation?
Yeah, it's tough. I think not really it wasn't a school audition, but just a few years ago, we have what's called the North American Saxophone Alliance biennial competition. So it's our national conference, and then there's the solo competition. And since I was in high school, this was a competition that I knew of, and it's the biggest one in North America. And I had tried it twice before and never advanced, and this was my last shot. And I made it to the finals and was not underprepared, but just not feeling good about one of the pieces. They give you, a pianist on the spot. You have an hour to rehearse, and then it's go time. And the rehearsal was okay, but not amazing. The pianist was absolutely amazing, and that was the problem. She was too good. We played a piece by Denisov, a Russian composer, very contemporary, and the rhythm in it is it's just extremely difficult. And she played it so accurately that it was almost impossible to put together. It was too good. I wasn't used to that kind of precision. I've played it before many times with other pianists, but nobody could ever play it that precisely. So it was this very odd problem of being over-prepared. She knew the music far too well. Right, yeah, I mean, it's a great problem to have, I suppose, but in a competition situation, it was very unnerving. So at any rate, we're getting ready to play in the finals, and I was pacing around in the hallway, and my friends were laughing at me. And before we walked on stage, I kind of had a talk with myself in the corner and just said, it's time to do this, and you can't worry about it, and focus, pay attention, and get through it. And I did, and I got through it, and the performance went much better than the rehearsal. And it was like a very defining moment in performance for me, because it was very comfortable, and I after I had the little chat with myself, I didn't feel nervous anymore. And it was a good audience, and everybody was very engaged, and I could look around and see that people were very interested in what I was doing, and it was, it turned into a very, very positive thing. So while I was a complete wreck before I walked on stage, I made the decision to not let that affect what was going to happen thereafter, and it was fine. So, but it was the most nervous I've ever been in my entire life. Yeah, very, very much so.
And at those conferences, it's an audience of all saxophonists.
Right. These are, who all know these pieces like the back of their hand. And the judges are people who I've respected since I was a teenager. And, major professors from across the country, and very, very, very unnerving. So, and that's a difficult situation. So, but it all worked out, and I told myself what I had to do, and that was that. But it was, definitely the worst my nerves have ever been, without a doubt. Were you there for that in Atlanta? That was in Atlanta. Okay. Yeah. Good question. Thank you for making me relive that. So, yeah.
Besides the soprano sax, do you also play the other three?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
How long did it take you to practice and learn those all, over your years in school, or did you have to take time out of your free time to, I guess, master or, get to a proficient level with them?
Sure. Well, I mean, like when I was coming up in high school and everything, I played alto and tenor a fair amount, and I started playing soprano late in high school. It was something that was interesting to me, and during my undergraduate, I played all four horns, wind ensemble, and I played in jazz band and quartet, etc. So I was always rotating and playing the other voices. My teacher, Dr. Rousseau, was a big proponent of making sure everybody played every voice. Very important. Just for versatility as a saxophonist. So, there would be a semester I'd play baritone and wind ensemble, and tenor and jazz band, and alto in my lessons, and soprano and something else. So it was great. You're always changing, and that really helps kind of learn the horn, because you're kind of forced to learn how to swim while you're drowning. And it worked out very well. Now my focus, I play a lot of soprano. I really like soprano. That's kind of feels most natural to me, and a lot of alto. I don't play much of the lower voices anymore, not because I don't like them. I have some minor jaw issues, so the bigger mouthpiece doesn't really complement me so well. But I was practicing all four voices in my undergraduate. Not every day, but during the week I would spend several hours on each. Again, at the insistence of my teacher, and it was a great thing. Yeah.
With that in mind, I know your teacher really wanted you to be well-rounded, but
Mhm.
I mean, is that a route you would recommend for all saxophonists or all horn players in the area?
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely knowing, for saxophone, it's a little, I don't want to say easier, but each saxophone is built the same way, it's just bigger. So like, we're not having to learn a new fingering system or anything like this, but I think absolutely you have to be able to play all the voices. It's really not a question. And beyond that, I think doubling is really important. I teach saxophone and clarinet at one college, so I feel comfortable on the clarinet. It's just part of what I need to do. During my doctorate, I did a minor in bassoon, so I play some bassoon. And oboe I can handle. Flute I'm not so good at. I've got quite the Cupid's bow lip, so side blowing doesn't really agree with me either. So that's my weakest one, but I can play flute. If I need to play in a big band and there's a flute part, I can handle it. So I think, versatility is really, really important in any field. So if you can come out of your undergraduate with your, maybe a bachelor's in education and be, very well versed in all the five woodwinds, well, you'll be in great shape. So when you get that call to, we want you to come play Music Man at the local theater. Well, that third book is like E-flat clarinet, B-flat clarinet, pick, saxophone, and probably something else crazy, wood block, I don't know. But you got to play them all. So it's very rare to have just a saxophone book or something like this. So I think versatility is great, and that's great for the resume to say, well, I'm proficient in these five areas, and I've got my education degree, and maybe you've taught at a middle school as like the saxophone instructor for a few years, or whatever the case may be. None of these things will hurt you in any way. So the more you can be comfortable doing, the more marketable you will be for a job. That's just the plain truth of it. So it's always a great thing to be very well-rounded in many areas. Yeah.
All right.
Cool.
Pretty good.
Anything else?
Are there any questions before we adjourn? Oh, Jason.
I have one more.
Sure.
I was just curious what you thought students should have prepared going into a four-year university as musicians. Like, what are the things you should know and have together prior to entering a four-year college?
In terms of like playing or?
Excuse me, playing and theoretical knowledge.
Well, I can tell you when I entered college, I had very little theoretical knowledge. My high school didn't offer an AP theory course or anything like this, so I knew very basic theory from, I mean, I took piano when I was a kid and did some other things, but you know, if you asked me to write a four-part, you know, chorale, I couldn't do it when I was a freshman. So I don't think that's as a necessity, no. But you know, that's why we go to school. So
That's true.
You know, we need to leave our teachers something to do.
Sure. I wasn't sure though with scales, chords,
Sure.
being able to build chords, being able to play scales.
I think building chords is important. I mean, you know, that goes right along with scale work, of course. So you know, major scales, I think it's a good idea to have all 12 down without any issue, and you know, at least maybe natural minors. That's what I usually look for when I have students audition. And then, yeah, building chords, maybe a very basic knowledge of, you know, the progressions. But certainly, you know, the major and natural minor scales are important, chromatic scales, these things. I also usually try to look for some sight reading in an audition situation. It's tough to gauge. You might have somebody come in and play a great audition. Their etude or their piece is really a knockout. But how long have they been working on that? You know, we don't know this. Could be a year, could be a month. So doing a very short, you know, 12-measure sight reading example can be a good indicator of, you know, how comfortable they are right off the bat. You know, getting rhythm and note accuracy and these types of things. So I think a short, you know, sight reading example can be a good indicator as, you know, as I'm listening to an audition. But yeah, I mean, beyond that, the theoretical knowledge, I think that just comes with being at this higher level of education. You know, high school, you know, we play in high school band and things like this. It's not, at least in my situation, you know, my band director was not talking about, well, the harmonic progression and the whole C-flat suite is, you know, we never went there. We made great music, but we didn't get to that level. I think that's what higher education is really all about. You know, this is where we get to really get our hands dirty and kind of really dig in.
Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's a good question, though.
Thank you.
Certainly.
Can we get you to play one more thing for us? No?
I don't have anything
No.
else. I only brought the first movement of this.
Shoot.
Improv.
I don't, yeah, no. You don't want to hear that.
You'll have to come tonight. So.
Yeah, be there tonight. There'll be lots more. So.
How about a hand for Dr. Taylor?
Thank you very much. The first piece we just played was the Sonatine by Claude Pascal. This is a favorite piece of mine, and I've had the good fortune to play it a number of times with Jason. It's been a pleasure to play it here tonight. Since there's no printed program, I'll step back every now and then to kind of update you about what's next on the program. So the next piece I'll play is something for unaccompanied alto saxophone. This is by Czech composer Jindřich Feld. He wrote this originally for clarinet, but at the insistence of my former teacher, he made a version for alto saxophone. It's a piece I learned when I was an undergraduate, and it's something that I've come to really enjoy playing. I had the chance to play this for the composer at one point when he was visiting the United States, and it was a very memorable experience, so I've been keen to program it a number of times now. So this is in 4 movements, entitled Suite Rhapsodica. Thank you very much. The piece we just played was the Fantasy for Flute by Fauré. That's my own arrangement of it. We've been playing this off and on for the last few months. I think this was probably our fifth or sixth performance. So it's a really great little piece and a lot of fun to play on saxophone, of course. So the next piece we'll do for you is another arrangement of mine of the Five Melodies for Violin by Prokofiev. the last two works we'll play this evening, the first one is Kodekan by Belgian composer Piet Sverts. This is originally a concerto for saxophone and orchestra. It was the required final round piece for the Dunant Concours in 2006, which I was happy to be a part of. It's a very neat piece, and the piano reduction works very well. I had the good opportunity to also work with the composer on this piece during his residency at the University of Iowa in 2010. So we're very proud to be playing it here tonight. And we'll finish up the evening with an arrangement I did of Piazzolla Oblivion, which is a nice slow tango. So thank you very much for being here. I want to thank my host, Dr. Joel Vanderheiden and Dr. McCready. It's been a wonderful day. I've been very fortunate to meet with the students and give a little talk, and I really appreciate the warm welcome here. So thank you very much, and we hope you'll come back and say hello once we finish this evening.
Thank you.